you all, and we've got some great panelists here who will be sharing with us their experiences and what they think are the most important trends going on right now. We're going to each do some sort of introduction as far as what we think, and then we're going to dive into some questions and have a discussion. So, you know, if any questions come up, and hopefully, John, you'll give me a time check.
Yes, I will.
We'll be happy to answer those. So, you know, one of the things I wanted to mention as a top trend is, or area of importance, is integration. You know, that's something that most businesses and organizations. Let me ask real quick, how many of you are in academia? Okay, I saw quite a few name tags. So we have a lot of academics here, so I know you all are interested in spreading the word about your organization, and might be slightly different from a business setting, but the same principles apply. And so I'm sure many of you have faced the issue of, you know, how do we integrate across our organization on these different platforms, and also, you know, how do you integrate the platforms themselves, the tools themselves. So a couple interesting things that happened recently, very recently actually, I wanted to point out, because innovation and integration is really what's getting people a lot of attention these days. So how many people here saw any of the Old Spice videos? Right, okay, so most people did. For those of you who didn't, and just to give you a little extra background, Old Spice did, along with their advertising, they did a really innovative campaign on YouTube where they basically, and then they supported that with, of course, Twitter and blogs and Facebook. It was crafted by Wyden and Kennedy, which is an ad agency. They used to represent Nike, so they've done a lot of forward-looking things. And what was really unique about it was they, you know, outreached to a lot of thought leaders and by Twitter and so forth. And then when people tweeted about the campaign, they would do real-time videos in response to the tweet, those who Twittered, or the blogs. So it was really hilarious, and it was, what was fascinating about it was it was the creatives, the tech people, and an actor were all in a room, and they ended up creating 180 videos that most of the videos, for those of you who didn't see them, called out people specifically. So, you know, there was one to Demi Moore, Mrs. Kutcher on Twitter, and he's talking to Demi. But then they also did it to, you know, some mid-tier bloggers. So they didn't just limit it to famous people. So it was really funny, and it was viewed more than 6 million times, these 180 videos, and that's still, you know, numbers going up all the time. And recent numbers have come out that they doubled their sales. So, you know, it's really, I think, intriguing, because Old Spice was sort of a brand that was very staid, and, you know, we thought of, you know, your dad uses it maybe, but so they made it much more hip by doing it, something innovative around it. And then another interesting example, I think, which is hot off the press this week, was the Ford Explorer launch. So they just this week launched the Ford Explorer 2011 on Facebook. And that, again, was a very integrated campaign where the public relations and advertising and everything tied in, but the unveiling, if you will, was on Facebook, the first pictures of it, that sort of thing. And so they really built a community around that. And more than at last count, about over 50,000 people had liked it, making them fans, and that means that they can, you know, market to those people on an ongoing basis. So there's a lot of innovation taking place. You know, it's sort of there's no limit to what you can try. So that's something that's really exciting about social media, I think. And so up next, Nick is going to tell us a little bit about you know, some of their recent campaigns and what they're doing currently, so we can learn from them.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm relatively new in my position at IXG. So as John said, I was at Home Depot for about 5 years. So I've got a good sort of opening experience in social media there. A lot of interesting nuances, frankly, that are similar at IHG. So I don't know how many folks are familiar with what IHG is or even what that stands for, but basically it's Intercontinental Hotels Group, and we are the owners of 6 or 7 holiday hotel brands. So it's Holiday Inn, Holiday Inn Express, a couple extended stay locations, which include Staybridge and Candlewood Suites, and then Intercontinental Crown Plaza. So several, basically a hotel brand company with a global footprint. So we are the largest hoteler by total number of rooms globally. So we have hotels all over the world, 4,400 in total. So it's a lot of similarities there to some of what we did at Home Depot, but some interesting challenges as well, given the space and given the ways that the business models are set up. But I would say, there's a lot of interesting opportunities for sort of a global corporation. As John had mentioned, there's some interesting challenges there as well as you think about building an overarching social media strategy that can support not only U.S. interests, but also the nuances that might play out in China or might play out in Singapore, or excuse me, might play out in Australasia or any number of other locations. So there's an interesting layer that has started to impact our jobs day in and day out, and really trying to figure out where the right boundaries are to say, we need to allow for some flexibility here, or we need to do things completely differently here. I mean, China's a great example where Facebook in and of itself is a totally different beast there because of some of the restrictions they have on internet access and the ability to even legally get to those sorts of sites. So I think all of that for me kind of dovetails into something that started really, I think, kind of at the end of last year and has really continued full on into 2010, which is what I sort of half-jokingly called the grind. And I think the reality is that most businesses today at the corporate level, 2 years ago I would go into meetings and talk about Facebook and get blank stares, right? So when you talk to C-level executives or even, frankly, senior management, a lot of folks didn't even know what Facebook was 2 years ago. Today, you go in those meetings, the question is not what is Facebook, what is Twitter, frankly, what is Foursquare. It's, okay, we know what they are, we understand loosely what they do, now how do we actually extract business value out of that? And frankly, that's a much less sexy question for a lot of folks to have to really figure out what the true business value is, whether it's ROI or any number of other metrics that you could use to evaluate the success or the failure of what you're doing in the spaces. So I think today, a lot of my time and a lot of my effort is put around really developing unsexy processes around how we determine what shows up on Twitter, right? How do we engage customers for customer service? All of the things that we need to do to actually add business value and to show that we've added business value. And it's all good work and exciting work, but it's not sort of the flashiness of, I manage Facebook or, I manage Twitter. It's much more ingrained in the business. So it has sort of pros and cons, but I think that that is really, I think, the reality, at least at the corporate level for a lot of folks today. Most of my peers that I talk to are in similar situations where it's less about, hey, it's great that you have a Facebook page. It's, okay, what are you actually doing with that to add value? Are you driving sales? Are you driving brand love? Are you driving engagement? Are you answering customer care solutions? So that's kind of where IHG is at today. And again, there's a global layer of complexity, but at the end of the day, it's about really extracting value for our shareholders and stakeholders.
Okay. Michael, what have you all been up to?
Well, in terms of integration, it happens for us. It's in 2 areas, and actually, I want to give away. I've got 2 free chicken sandwiches for the person who can tell me how many Will It Blend videos have been viewed on YouTube. And the second one is free sandwich who can tell me the number of fans Will It Blend on the Blendtec Facebook page. I'll come back to that in a minute. The other is,
again, that you would never do anywhere else when it comes to Twitter and Facebook and your blogs and pictures that you take and put on Flickr and whatever else you might do, that we've lost all abandon. So a lot of what we recommend is very much just sort of putting that sort of common sense lens back on it and just sort of reminding people. And by and large, that takes care of the large majority of folks that are participating.
It's good to have in writing. Don't say my boss at Acme Company is an idiot.
Right.
And if you actually have it written out in a policy, then people realize they need to take that direction seriously. Michael, you mentioned you guys have sort of a unique situation since you do have the franchisees. What are your policies?
well, the there was a great article in Harvard Business Review a couple months ago about empowering your employees and the pros and cons of that, and monitoring and responding to customers in the social realm. For Chick-fil-A, it's we're still holding it pretty close to the vest with those people who are most aware and engaged in it most frequently. We're going to follow Coke's example, and they have a great certification program where if anybody in the company wants to, be part of the village that manages, the brand online, you can do that, but you have to be certified to do that. I think that's sort of an underlying understanding of the operators out there. We have close to 1,500 of them, and almost weekly we'll get an email either to me or someone in the group saying, hey, I just noticed an inappropriate photo, could you take that down? So they kind of know, because it's so ingrained, the culture of Chick-fil-A is just so ingrained in everyone we bring on, and continually communicating, which I think is a huge part of the policy that people miss. That they're so focused on the legalities and the guardrails that they don't put that in context of, well, but here's what our brand's all about. Let me remind you what our core values are. Let me remind you what we even exist and why we're in business. And that puts in context, it gives meaning to the guardrails. The guardrails aren't just there because legal said we had to put them there. They're there because of what? Why? Why are you having those guardrails up there? So that's where we're starting. And we're kind of branching out so that it becomes sort of a spider diagram versus opening it up to anybody who wants to come get certified, so to speak. It's let the interest bubble up and let them come to us. And so far, I've got one person in accounting that's expressed interest, one person in IT that's expressed interest, and so we're kind of letting it grow organically. So I guess the social media way. So.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a question about your certification thing. Do you mean right now your group are the only ones that's actually like responding via the social media marketing, and people within the company who want to, they're going to be allowed to respond, or so right now if they're not certified, they can't create an account to respond? How's that work?
Yeah, so we don't have a formalized certification program.
Oh.
What's happening is that they'll email me or someone in the group, and we've got Engage Digital is our digital agency. We've got a guy on site at least once a week, and everybody's getting to know him, because if something inappropriate comes up, if they have a question about how to respond, then they'll go to him and us. So there is sort of indirectly being educated by the people that we're beginning to understand, wow, we get a lot of responses from this guy, or we get a lot of responses from this girl. And we'll eventually, the plan is to bring them in and say, hey, listen, we know that you've done a lot of monitoring, and I think that's awesome. We want to give you some more, we want to empower you with some more information.
Oh.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, Michael, is it tough, if all these different locations, operators want to open their own type thing, Twitter for North Druid Hill, Chick-fil-A or whatnot, does that make it hard because you're not in one centralized channel anymore? You're all spread out, everyone wants to open their own Facebook fan page for,
Yeah.
Basel Road, Chick-fil-A or something.
Yeah, we actually encourage that.
You do?
Yeah, because our model is different from most in the retail industry, in that we don't, most of the budget of our competition, if you can look at it as an inverted triangle, is spent at the national level. And as you funnel down to the local level, very little is spent in terms of all the dollars that come into corporate. It's very centralized, and it's very little of it spent at the local level. We flip that over, and very little of it spent at the national level, and a ton is invested at the unit level. So we have resources for operators that if they want to start their own Facebook page, here's how to do that. If they want to do their Twitter, here's how to do that. If they want to maximize any of that stuff, here's how to do that. And so we're constantly coaching and counseling on how they can get started in this space and maintain their email as well as their website as well.
I noticed that through the spicy chicken example, because we got an email from the owner or the manager of the specific restaurant where you put the reservation in. I'm curious, I love the national ads you guys have, the billboard campaigns, the Chick-fil-A stuff, especially the cows. Does that lose advertising dollars with social media rise? Are you pulling out of the billboard stuff?
No. In fact, it'll always be there, because that is really the creative engine that drives people to, and frankly, admittedly, we haven't done a great job, but on eatmorechicken.com is the cow's website. you can go on and create your own billboard, and sort of a Hallmark billboard you can send to a friend kind of thing. It's not real clear how you do that, but we're fixing that. But without the continuation of that material that's on billboards, we really don't have the fodder we need to continue just online. So we're working together.
That's what I was about to say. I live right next to the 85 and Peachtree, the big billboard you guys have up in the hotel. Have you thought about incorporating social media on that board? You know,
Yeah.
follow us on Twitter, or here's our Facebook fan page. Is there a way to get people into the mix?
Yes, in fact, interesting you should say that, because we're on a conference call with the agency, the Richards Group out of Dallas, reviewing new brand radio spots. And at the end of it, I said, hey, can we pull up a little bit? And when we're talking about brand advertising, why not become more integrated and think, hey, we've got 2 million fans, over 2 million fans online. We're not tapping into that at all. There's no integration between traditional media and online media. So, we're just now coming to, it's a campaign I have internally to try to just bring awareness of, even to the agency, to say, look, this is something that we have a huge audience online. A lot of it is untapped, and we're not taking advantage of it to drive people back and forth from meetings.
Right, and I think that goes back to the integration issue, which is, because previously organizations have had silos, agencies a lot of times have operated in those silos, and so it really sort of takes leadership at the brand or the company or the organization level to sort of take that overarching view. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think in a lot of ways social has sort of forced that conversation, right? So using Home Depot, sort of my past life is a good example of this, right? We had a tough time getting .com tags in radios, right? Forget social, right? You couldn't get a make sure to visit HomeDepot.com tag in your radio or television spot. So I think social and the sort of the pervasiveness of that, both in spots that you see and hear, as well as just the marketplace generally, have forced the conversation for businesses to say, look, this interactive space, which, believe it or not, I don't know if this is true at Chick-fil-A, I mean, at both IHG and at Home Depot, there's still a lot of hesitation to the web generally. This sort of social has really pushed that conversation to the point to say, we need to be including something. Let's have a conversation about what makes the most sense. Is it our website? Is it our Facebook fan page? Is it our Twitter profile? Is it something? It is something, and what is that something? And again, social has really pushed that pretty heavily in the last year or so.
And I think it's good to keep in mind that, the sum is greater than the parts. You can't really, you can reallocate your dollars and your spend, but you can't get rid of certain traditional channels for social media because, as Michael mentioned, it won't succeed to the level that it has been if you put it in a vacuum. So, and then one other point about social media policies, I just wanted to note that, it's in a lot of instances, it's really great to have your employees, communicating through their social networks about your company because they're very passionate, we hope, about your company and your organization. So, but the social media policy, as Michael said, create some guardrails as far as what they can and can't do. So, and then we're probably about running out of time. Okay, so, but I did want to make sure we talk a little bit about the actual social media channels and tools, and have you had the most success with particular ones, and are there any that you kind of can suggest to avoid?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think it really depends on the non-answers. It depends on what your business goals and objectives are, right? So I think honestly, if you've got a really strong buy-in with customer care and with your customer support team, there's a lot of great examples of companies that have used Twitter successfully in customer care. Right? I know, the big Comcast examples. I know Home Depot previously, had done a pretty good job there. Dell is using Twitter pretty effectively, both for sales and for customer care. So, if you've got that sort of bench strength within your organization, I think that Twitter is a great tool for you there. There's, again, lots of good examples of folks that use Facebook effectively. So I think it really just depends on what you want to do, what you think is most important, and frankly, what your business is going to value. So if you're looking for sort sort of more traditional direct response, driving, advertising, whether it's e-com or foot traffic, there are probably some channels that are better suited for that. One thing that we've started experimenting with pretty heavily is location-based. So for us, again, if you think about the hotel experience, there's a lot of opportunities to message to folks around their arrival and departure. So we're actually just launched a pilot with a company called TopGuest, which actually awards people who check in on Foursquare Priority Club Rewards points, which is our loyalty program. Actually rewards them real points for any check-in at a hotel property worldwide. So we think that there's some significant opportunity in location-based for us. We also have done some advertising on GoWalla. So are those going to be the spaces that, are they going to be the companies that win? We'll see, but we feel like there's an opportunity again around that location-specific opportunity that won't just be coupons, although we do probably think there's value there, but how do we drive loyalty and preference via location? So for us, that's, it's obviously a hot space, but it's one that we think, actually has some good business value for us.
Well, rather than trying to go create conversations where they don't exist, we try to figure out where they exist currently and how to create more and more stir the pot. So where probably we're going is in the future is how to, well, I was at Google in San Francisco this week, and we were talking to them about the layers application and the near field communications and the RFID chips that, they're everywhere in Europe and Japan, and they're not required here. I read that Walmart is going to start requiring, by the way, Walmart is the largest cell phone set distributor. I didn't realize that, but they're going to require all of their brands of phones start including an RFID chip, which enables us to do things like near field communications. And so that for us, we think that might be an opportunity to allow the operators to expand whatever they're posting and have in terms of their Google search data already, to come up through the Layers app, so that when they're driving down the road and they pull up their Android app, that they can see the local information that is hopefully relevant to them. So that's kind of what we're exploring now.
Great. Well, I know that's always a key question, so we wanted to ask it, but I know your choices about where you want to be and where you want to allocate your assets most heavily really start with your overall business strategy and then your marketing strategy. And I know that's what Toby is going to be discussing with us shortly. So I think we're out of time. So thanks everyone for your attention this morning.
Thank you very much, panel. That was excellent. Great start. And I'd like to move right along to our next panel. Actually, our next case study, our first case study of the day is with UPS, how to defend your brand in social media. And with us to present is Debbie Curtis-Magley, Public Relations Manager at UPS. And Debbie leads social media strategy, policies, and practices at UPS. In her role, she oversees online monitoring, guides research and reporting, and leads collaboration with communications, legal, and technology functions on social media practices. So Debbie, it's great to have you today. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I know we're running a little behind schedule, and I've got a lot of slides, so I'm going to try to navigate quickly through some of these and kind of focus the conversation on the things where I think there'll be more value-add takeaways. So before we get started, I'm just kind of curious to know how many folks in the room have dealt with an uncomfortable issue in social media for their brand or maybe for some other cause? A couple hands. Does it feel pretty scary to deal with something like this? Yeah, a couple head nods. Yeah, it's we've had a lot of interesting situations over the past year or so, and different issues that we've encountered. And from our experience, we found that while they can certainly be uncomfortable, they also offer us some really great opportunities to talk about the value and importance of social media within our organization, as well as demonstrate how we can leverage some of that real-time data and quickly sort of turn a situation around and in some instances, use it to our advantage to help get stories across and really help kind of amplify that and kind of ignite some of our online advocates that are already out there talking about our brand. So let me get started. This is the slide. I think everybody in the room cares about social media. My point with sharing this slide is the fact that there may be others in your organization who are sort of struggling with what the business value is and why should we care. So that's why I wanted to share this with you. And a couple key points. The first is that everybody's mobile. They're either carrying around an iPhone, a Droid, or a BlackBerry. And so through that, they're instantaneously sharing their experiences with others. And that is becoming part of a global conversation that people can look for and search and learn about. There was an interesting statistic from Mary Meeker at Morgan Stanley recently, I heard at a conference, that by 2012, which is technically a year and a half away, new shipments for PCs would be, or I guess new shipments for smartphones will exceed new shipments for PCs. So if you think about that, more people are going to be relying and using their mobile devices for communications and for other activities they might have traditionally used on a laptop. That's really sort of a big change to consider. The other point, as I mentioned, that kind of goes into this, everyone's mobile, is that they're sharing their experiences and opinions instantaneously. And that is not just a part of a conversation with their friends, but it is searchable content. Because for the most part, it's public, it's easily accessible. And the last point, search drives awareness and relevance. When a lot of people think about search, they're probably thinking about Google. But the fact that the social search space is huge. YouTube cites itself as being the second most popular search site. Twitter gets around 600 million search hits a day. And then there's Facebook, which is really trying to be a destination for search. So a lot of conversations that are happening within the social space, people are searching for that content within the social space. And so you want to make sure that your brand's viewpoints and information and response to different issues are a part of those search results. So I'm going to start off a little bit by talking about some of our initial experiences jumping into the social conversation. And so I'm going to title this Jumping into the Storm, which literally is what we did. Close to 2 years ago, there were some really severe snowstorms that kind of crippled the Northwest. And this happened around Christmas. And what people are doing during the holidays is when they can't celebrate with their loved ones, they're shipping their gifts. And so it hit all the shipping companies because the transportation infrastructure was really disabled. I mean, the roadways, a lot of different ways, roads and systems that we rely upon to travel were all impacted. Well, UPS tends to carry a lot of those holiday shipments. So there was a lot of conversation happening about our brand and people struggling to try to get information about where are my holiday shipments. A lot of emotions tied to this. Prior to this instance, we've been having quite a lot of conversations with our customer service folks and talking with them about how we needed to set up a protocol to be able to take customer concerns that we encounter online and take care of those customers in an offline environment so that we were.
Integration is for us who have bricks and mortar. How do we translate the face-to-face experience online? And then how do we take that online experience and drive it to the store? So one of the ways we did that recently is to experiment with what we're calling a reservation system, whereby customers can come in and make a reservation. They can identify the store that they frequent most, that's near them, pick a time that they want to come in, and register to get a free spicy chicken sandwich, which is our new product that we recently launched. So we opened this up first before the week that the general public would know about it through PR and some advertising we did to our email database of 1.5 million and our fan pages, our fans on our fan page, and it was at that point it was a little over 2 million. And there was a Friday when we opened this up, and for most of the day Friday we averaged 6 to 7 reservations a second just through social media. So it talks for Chick-fil-A. The integration is a challenge in that they have our franchisees, what we call operators, have done such a great job creating an emotional connection down at the unit level that it's almost a more intimate relationship to stay within that Facebook of that restaurant, stay within the Twitter if they have it, and the .com of that restaurant. And so we've tried to garner that passion at the local level and transfer it up to the national level. And so far it seems to be working pretty well. So, all right, who's got the answer? Right? Which one?
There's 131 million views.
131 million views. Everybody familiar with Will It Blend? Right? Where they dump stuff in blenders and, you know, and video of it blending like they did the iPhone. They blended it to try to explain the power of this product, right? All right, so now how many fans do they have on their Facebook page? Yes?
48,000.
Okay, 131 million versus 48,000. What's wrong with that picture, right? So another thing, I'm going to just go ahead and get this down so I don't forget. Thanks for that. So another thing about integration is across media channels, across online channels, that it's been a huge challenge for us because we've got over 2 million fans on our Facebook page. We only have 30,000 on our Twitter, and I say only if you place it on by restaurant, like fans per restaurant or followers per restaurant, we actually have a stronger fan base than Starbucks, and like Subway, who have 15,000 locations. So again, the intimacy of the connectivity online is strong. But we're not quite doing all we can to say, hey, you know, the .com, the Twitter, and the Cows properties online, they have their own website now, and their own Facebook, we haven't done a good job about, hey, really understanding who's in the database, who are also fans, and who are also fans of the Cows, and so on. So we've got a lot to learn, and we're experimenting now with that. So.
Great. Just a follow-up question on that. How do you communicate the reservations to the actual location?
All right, so we opened it up to Facebook first of all, and that was, it opened Friday, and by Sunday, over half of all the total reservations available, which is 1.4 million reservations available, over half of them had been taken, strictly by the social media power. So that went out, and then the PR blitz happened on Monday. So that's how we got it out to the public. And then at each restaurant, they had a point of purchase that they could put up, and as well as bag stuffers that they could distribute to their customers. So that's how we got it out.
Okay.
Yes, now my question is going to be, do you know out of the number of reservations, how many people actually showed up?
Great question. All right, so
That measurement?
yeah, so we tested it in 2 markets, and the redemption was 65%. Overall, the actual one is looking like more about 50 to 55%. But if you think about coupon distribution, if anybody's done direct mail and coupon in a direct mail, 2-3% would be great.
That's great.
Yeah, so we're pretty surprised and happy about that. So.
Great. All right. And so, you know, a big question that I have for you guys is, you know, traditionally PR, marketing, advertising, and definitely customer service sort of siloed across the organization. You know, they communicated, but there wasn't tight integration necessarily. You know, how do you handle that? What kind of organizational changes have you seen as a result of social media? Nick?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? You know, in big organizations, and frankly, in distributed organizations similar to Chick-fil-A, it is it's an issue that we're still grappling with, right? So if you think about, we'll take customer care as one example. You know, if I'm staying at the Intercontinental in Buckhead here in Atlanta, and I have an issue, if I'm a customer and I have an issue with my check-in, right, the last thing that I want is somebody from corporate reaching out to me to try to answer my question that then passes me back to somebody at the hotel, you know, and frankly, does all of that happen in the 5 minutes that I'm actually standing in the lobby? So, you know, we've got sort of multiple layers of complexity, not only around communications and customer care, but also frankly for marketing. So we've got the corporate layer, and then we've got the property level. So I think our challenge is really kind of twofold. One is, frankly, as cliche as it is communication, right? So one of the things that we're working pretty strongly towards is really figuring out how to understand what the business stakeholders, both at the corporate level, at the property level, at the brand level, at the regional level, what their sort of position is with respect to social media and how they are planning to or already using it, right? So if we've got folks in, again, as in Asia, as an example, who There are some good efforts underway there to both listen to the conversation and figure out how to best engage that. And we need to understand how that plays into what we're trying to do, globally, what best practices we can leverage, all of that sort of stuff. And a lot of that just happens with emails, phone calls, face-to-face when we can, really to just understand how the stakeholders throughout the business see social playing into what they're doing. I think the other piece for us is really being able to distribute not just the communication, but then being able to turn around and distribute the best practices and to not hinder, unless we absolutely have to, hinder good progress that's been made. So again, if there are programs that are in place that are effectively reaching customers and are really driving business goals, really trying to figure out what we can leverage, out of that instance elsewhere throughout the organization. But it's been a challenge for sure. I think it's one that we're making good strides on, but will continue to be something that we work towards.
Do you use a tool or dashboard to help with the communication across the organization?
Yes, that's one of the things that we're developing, especially our sort of real first foray into that is around the listening space, right? So it understands what's being said about Holiday Inn globally and who are the right stakeholders to be involved in that conversation, right? So again, if we've got customers talking about their check-in at a Holiday Inn, a different group might impact that than someone who's sort of post-stay 2 weeks later saying, hey, I had a great vacation at the Holiday Inn in Orlando, and they're just raving about the experience. So the teams that would be involved to sort of digest that are in different places in the business and frankly in different time frames, right? Again, think about someone in the midst of a stay in the hotel having a bad experience, or a good experience for that matter. That's different than someone who just after the fact is sharing pictures of the great property and sort of the ways in which we need to reach out to them. So we're in the process of understanding that, digesting them, and mapping out again who the right stakeholders are to be engaged at the different touch points for our customers.
Is there a specific tool that you use, or are you developing that internally?
So we're in the middle of an RFP around a couple of different things.
Right.
So there are some, personally, there are some off-the-shelf tools that we use. Again, given the complexity of our business, we're trying to understand whether there is a tool that we can use. So when you think about off-the-shelf, there's a lot of off-the-shelf applications for English and for Spanish and for a couple other things. When you get into China again, which is the big caveat for us, double byte characters, all of that sort of stuff add a layer of complexity that are difficult for a lot of off-the-shelf stuff. So again, we're in the process of diving deep on all that.
Right. Right. So these are hot topics. See, everyone is in the midst of dealing with them. So, Michael, how about you? How's your organization handling trying to break down the silos and structure?
Well, from a customer experience standpoint, at the end of last year, the first of this year, we engaged, in fact, Tony Bloomberg joined us, and we'll hear from her later.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome. Plug number one.
It's an incestuous world.
To try to come up with keywords, so we engage with MotiveQuest to identify some keywords about topics and subject matter that are currently being talked about or have been talked about or might possibly be talked about. Handed that over to Radian6, and that's what we're using now to monitor monthly reports and really trends and try to identify peaks and valleys and specific searches on those keywords. In addition to that, okay, and that goes to our customer experience department, right? Okay, those guys also manage the CARES program, which is our customer recovery, and it's managed through Good Answer. Folks, our friends at Coke also. And now we're branching out into, hey, how do we handle, who's monitoring Yelp, who's monitoring Facebook and Twitter, and we're talking with the CARES organization to figure out, hey, rather than having representatives monitor telephone calls and emails, let's divide that budget a little bit. It's not growing the budget, it's a reallocation of it to monitor the social media channels. So, and if you hadn't had a chance to take a look at the, ironically, the United States Air Force web post, how they handle their web posts, it's awesome. And we're kind of structuring ours following that framework. the way they do that is that if it's a positive, it goes in one direction. If it's a negative post, then what's the nature of the negativity? Is it just a rant? And if it is, the nature of the rant goes to a particular person. If it's if they're just misinformed, then it goes, depending on what they're misinformed about, that goes to the subject matter expert to gently point them in the right direction, right? So it's a great little framework. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I suggest you do.
Great. Yeah, and for those of you, I know, like we said, we have a lot of folks here in academia. You know, I'm sure you can imagine how, you know, a student complaining about a professor on Twitter or their Facebook page would be handled much differently than, you know, your outreach to prospective students who are asking questions like, I wonder if this school has the programs I need, and, you know, so you'll, regardless of the size of your organization, I think it, you know, you come across this issue of, you know, well, how are we going to handle each of these communications that we find through our listening tools? So Michael, do you have a special social media department? Who's in charge of social media?
That would be me.
Yeah.
And so the first 2 years of this role, it was me. And last year, I got approval for 2 more bodies for this year. So it is definitely gaining momentum within Chick-fil-A, but I think where that momentum might be coming from is not necessarily anything I've certainly done, but really what the operators have done and the team members with the customer experience. We're not creating conversations at Chick-fil-A. We're really just trying to be good stewards of the ones that are already out there. And how do we stir that pot and get them more frequently engaged and give them tools that they can share? Sort of the underpinning strategy for us is personalization and story sharing. So if we can use the digital space to create a personal experience and one that is worthy of sharing, then we feel like we've done our job. We enlist PR. PR actually, we got a guy named Mark Baldwin who does our Twitter. He does a fantastic job. We use the local training guys to help train operators and what we call unit marketing directors. Just about every restaurant has at least one, to give them the tools, because they all want to get into this because it's you know, it's hot, it's the buzz, but they're not sure quite how to do it. And we've seen all kinds of manifestations online, from, you know, creating their own cow websites to starting their own Facebook in a way that just completely limits what they really want to do. So we're reaching out. So operations has a little hand in it, and PR has a little hand in it now, and as well as we're trying to support, you know, our sponsorships and events. We may not be on their radar to use social media with, like the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Well, how do we plug into that? So.
Right. That's interesting. So you're actually integrating social media training into existing training programs?
Right.
Okay. And Nick, how about you all? How are you? Who's in charge? Because that's an ongoing question for a lot of
So I guess day to day it's me, right? Similar to not big teams. So my function lives within essentially direct marketing, so we call it distribution relationship marketing at IHG. But it's a piece of marketing today. That said, we have very strong partnerships with PR for a lot of what we do on Twitter and Facebook, as well as customer care. And similarly for our operators, there's a lot of training that has been developed and is continuing to be refined. Right, one of the challenges that we run into is if you know, a lot of what's out there today may be 6 months or 12 months or 18 months old, and the space has changed a lot in the last year, right? So at least there's a base level there that we know there's a lot of work to be done, but we sort of integrated that into some of our training offerings as well. So I think, again, part of what we're trying to do is to figure out what pieces need to be centralized and managed from our team, and what pieces really can be distributed, right? And so again, similar to Michael with franchisees, with our operators, you know, what bounds and limits do we or do we not want to set for our individual properties in terms of Facebook or Twitter, or how do we give them best practices to do what they're good at doing and allow them to focus on the customer experience rather than feeling like they need to chase the next shiny object, which is what we see happens a lot of times. So that's where we're at today.
Okay, great, and I think, that segues into the next question. With, here in the room, not to put everyone on the spot, but how many of you have a social media policy for your organization? Right, it's a lot of times it can be sort of an afterthought. You want to be involved in the different social media channels, so you stampede into it, and then you think, oh, maybe we need a policy for our employees, what, to make it clear what they can do, what you're giving them free license to do, and then what they should not be doing. And so can you talk a little bit about your social media policy? What do you think are the most important elements to include?
Yeah, so to be honest, we don't have one at the moment, to my knowledge, which again, that's possible. I'll figure it out after I leave this meeting and somebody sees a tweet about it. But it's one of the things. It's one of the things on the radar, right? So I definitely believe that there's a significant need for that. I think again, our overarching sort of goal is to understand where we think we're going to put those boundaries. So there's been some deliberate hesitation to put anything out too soon. If we, so as an example, right, if we decide holistically that we don't want, I'll use an example, say Holiday Inn Express, right, let's decide we think that the best play for that is for there to be a centralized social media presence on Facebook, because how many people really are going to engage with the Holiday Inn Express and Bismarck, South Dakota versus Holiday Inn Express collectively, right? If that's the decision that we as a business make, then we don't want our social media policy to say, you can set up Facebook pages for your hotel properties, right? So there's a lot of those issues that we're just hashing through, so that when we do come out with a policy, that it's clear and concise, but also isn't something that as soon as we put it out, we have to change. So I think, generally speaking, though, and we did a lot of this at Home Depot. I mean, it's really about setting very clear but very loose guidelines, right? So it's make sure that you represent. If you're going to interact on behalf of the company, make sure that you're very clear that you work as a representative of the company, right? Don't just sort of show up in blogs and on Twitter and act like a customer when you're really not. Don't talk about the things that you wouldn't talk about anywhere else. So don't talk about sales, don't talk about financials, don't talk about things that you don't know anything about. More of those sort of general guiding principles. The thing has always been curious to me about this is, for whatever reason, people tend to forget what they knew in other spaces when it comes to social media. You would never do anywhere else when it comes to Twitter and Facebook and your blogs and pictures that you take and put on Flickr and whatever else you might do. That we've lost all abandon. So a lot of what we recommend is very much just sort of putting that sort of common sense lens back on it, and just sort of reminding people. And by and large, that takes care of the large majority of folks that are participating.
It's good to have in writing. Don't say my boss at Acme Company is an idiot.
Right.
And if you actually have it written out in a policy, then people realize they need to take that direction seriously. Michael, you mentioned you guys have sort of a unique situation since you do have the franchisees. What are your policies?
Well, there was a great article in Harvard Business Review a couple months ago about empowering your employees and the pros and cons of that, and monitoring and responding to customers in the social realm. For Chick-fil-A, it's we're still holding it pretty close to the vest with those people who are most aware and engaged in it most frequently. We're going to follow Coke's example, and they have a great certification program where if anybody in the company wants to be part of the village that manages the brand online, you can do that, but you have to be certified to do that. I think that's sort of an underlying understanding of the operators out there. We have close to 1,500 of them, and almost weekly we'll get an email either to me or someone in the group saying, hey, I just noticed an inappropriate photo, could you take that down? So they kind of know, because it's so ingrained. The culture of Chick-fil-A is just so ingrained in everyone we bring on, and continually communicating, which I think is a huge part of the policy that people miss. that they're so focused on the legalities and the guardrails that they don't put that in context of, well, but here's what our brand's all about. Let me remind you what our core values are. Let me remind you what we even exist and why we're in business. And that puts in context, it gives meaning to the guardrails. You know, the guardrails aren't just there because legal said we had to put them there. They're there because of what? Why? Why are you having those guardrails up there? So that's where we're starting. And we're kind of branching out so that it becomes sort of a spider diagram versus opening it up to anybody who wants to come get certified, so to speak. It's let the interest bubble up and let them come to us. And so far, you know, I've got one person in accounting that's expressed interest, one person in IT that's expressed interest. And so we're kind of letting it grow organically, so I guess the social media way. So.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a question about your certification thing. Do you mean right now your group are the only ones that's actually like responding via the social media marketing, and people within the company who want to, they're going to be allowed to respond? Or so right now, if they're not certified, they can't create an account to respond? How does that work?
Yeah, so we don't have a formalized certification program.
Oh.
What's happening is that they'll email me or someone in the group, and we've got Engage Digital is our digital agency. We've got a guy on site at least once a week, and everybody's getting to know him because if something inappropriate comes up, if they have a question about how to respond, then they'll go to him and us. So there is sort of indirectly being educated by the people that we're beginning to understand, wow, we get a lot of responses from this guy, or we get a lot of responses from this girl. And we'll eventually, the plan is, to bring them in and say, hey, listen, we know that you've done a lot of monitoring, and I think that's awesome. We want to give you some more, we want to empower you with some more information.
Oh.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, Michael, is it tough, you know, if all these different locations, operators want to open their own type thing, you know, Twitter for North Druid Hills, Chick-fil-A, or whatnot?
Right.
Does that make it hard because you're not in one centralized channel anymore? You're all spread out, everyone wants to open their own Facebook fan page for, I don't know,
Yeah.
Russell Road, Chick-fil-A or something.
Yeah, we actually encourage that.
You do?
Yeah, because our model is different from most in the retail industry in that we don't, most of the budget of our competition, if you can look at it as an inverted triangle, is spent at the national level. And as you funnel down to the local level, very little is spent in terms of all the dollars that come into corporate. It's very centralized, and it's very little of it spent at the local level. We flip that over, and very little of it spent at the national level, and a ton is invested at the unit level. So we have resources for operators that if they want to start their own Facebook page, here's how to do that. If they want to do their Twitter, here's how to do that. If they want to maximize any of that stuff, here's how to do that. And so we're constantly coaching and counseling on how they can get started in this space and maintain, you know, their email as well as their website as well.
I noticed that through the spicy chicken example because we got an email from the owner or the manager of the specific restaurant where you put the reservation in. I'm curious, I love the national ads you guys have, the billboard campaigns, the Chick-fil-A stuff, especially the cows. Does that lose advertising dollars with social media rise? Are you pulling out of the billboard stuff?
No. In fact, it'll always be there because that is really the creative engine that drives people to, and frankly, admittedly, we haven't done a great job, but on eatmorechicken.com is the cow's website. You can go on and create your own billboard and sort of a Hallmark billboard you can send to a friend kind of a thing. It's not real clear how you do that, but we're fixing that. But without the continuation of that material that's on billboards, we really don't have the fodder we need to continue interest online. So we're working together.
That's what I was going to say. I live right next to the 85 and Peachtree, the big billboard you guys have up in the hotel. Have you thought about incorporating social media on that board? You know, follow us on Twitter, or here's our Facebook fan page. Is there a way to get people into the mix?
Yes. In fact, interesting you should say that because we're on a conference call with the agency, the Richards Group out of Dallas, reviewing new brand radio spots. And at the end of it, I said, hey, can we pull up a little bit? And when we're talking about brand advertising, why not become more integrated and think, hey, we've got 2 million fans, over 2 million fans online. We're not tapping into that at all. There's no integration between traditional media and online media. So, you know, we're just now coming to, it's a campaign I have internally to try to just bring awareness of, even to the agency, to say, look, this is is something that we have a huge audience online. A lot of it is untapped, and we're not taking advantage of it to drive people back and forth from meetings.
Right, and I think that goes back to the integration issue, which is, because previously organizations have had silos, agencies, a lot of times have operated in those silos, and so it really sort of takes leadership at the brand or the company or the organization level to sort of take that overarching view. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think in a lot of ways, social has sort of forced that conversation. Right? So, using Home Depot, sort of my past life was a good example of this. Right? We had a tough time getting .com tags in radios. Right? Forget social. Right? You couldn't get a make sure to visit HomeDepot.com tag in your radio or television spot. So I think social and the sort of the pervasiveness of that, both in spots that you see and hear, as well as just the marketplace generally, have forced the conversation for businesses to say, look, this interactive space, which, believe it or not, I don't know if this is true at Chick-fil-A, I mean, at both IHG and at Home Depot, there's still a lot of hesitation to the web generally. This sort of social has really pushed that conversation to the point to say, we need to be including something. Let's have a conversation about what makes the most sense. Is it our website? Is it our Facebook fan page? Is it our Twitter profile? Is it something? It is something, and what is that something? And again, social has really pushed that pretty heavily in the last year or so.
And I think it's good to keep in mind that, the sum is greater than the parts. We can't really, you can reallocate your dollars and your spend, but you can't get rid of certain traditional channels for social media because, as Michael mentioned, it won't succeed to the level that it has been if you put it in a vacuum. So, and then one other point about social media policies, I just wanted to note that, it's in a lot of instances, it's really great to have your employees, communicating through their social networks about your company because they're very passionate, we hope, about your company and your organization. And so, but the social media policy, as Michael said, creates some guardrails as far as what they can and can't do. So, and then we're probably about running out of time, okay? So, but I did want to make sure we talk a little bit about the actual social media channels and tools, and have you had the most success with particular ones, and are there any that you kind of can suggest to avoid?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think it really depends on the non-answer is it depends on what your business goals and objectives are, right? So I think honestly, if you've got a really strong buy-in with customer care and with your customer support team, there's a lot of great examples of companies that have used Twitter successfully in customer care, right? I know, the big Comcast examples. I know Home Depot previously, had done a pretty good job there. Dell is using Twitter pretty effectively, both for sales and for customer care. So, if you've got that sort of bench strength within your organization, I think that Twitter is a great tool for you there. There's, again, lots of good examples of folks that have used Facebook effectively. So I think it really just depends on what you want to do, what you think is most important, and frankly, what your business is going to value. So if you're looking for sort of more traditional direct response driving, advertising, whether it's e-com or foot traffic, there are probably some channels that are better suited for that. One thing that we've started experimenting with pretty heavily is location-based. So for us, again, if you think about the hotel experience, there's a lot of opportunities to message to folks around their arrival and departure. So we're actually just launched a pilot with a company called TalkGuest, which actually awards people who check in on Foursquare Priority Club Rewards points, which is our loyalty program. Actually rewards them real points for any check-in at a hotel property worldwide. So we think that there's some significant opportunity in location-based for us. We also have done some advertising on GoWalla. So are those going to be the spaces that, are they going to be the companies that win? We'll see, but we feel like there's an opportunity again around that location-specific opportunity that won't just be coupons, although we do probably think there's value there, but how do we drive loyalty and preference via location? So for us, that's, it's obviously a hot space, but it's one that we think, actually has some good business value for us.
Well, rather than trying to create conversations where they don't exist, we try to figure out where they exist currently and how to create more and more stir the pot. So Where probably we're going is, in the future, is how to, well, I was at Google in San Francisco this week, and we were talking to them about the layers application and the near field communications and the RFID chips that, I mean, they're everywhere in Europe and Japan, and they're not required here. I read that Walmart is going to start requiring, by the way, Walmart is the largest cell phone set distributor. I didn't realize that, but they're going to require all of their brands of phones start including an RFID chip, which enables us to do things like near field communications. And so that, for us, we think that might be an opportunity to allow the operators to expand whatever they're posting and have in terms of their Google search data already, to come up through the Layers app, so that when they're driving down the road and they pull up their Android app, that they can see the local information that is, hopefully relevant to them. So that's kind of what we're exploring now.
Great. Well, I know, that's always a key question, so we wanted to ask it, but I know your choices about where you want to be and where you want to allocate your assets most heavily really start with your overall business strategy and then your marketing strategy. And I know that's what Toby is going to be discussing with us shortly. So I think we're out of time. So thanks everyone for your